Hello and welcome to the Doing the Rounds podcast with me, Josh Faulkner. Things have been a bit weird lately, so I thought I'd make a podcast where I sit down and shoot the breeze with the characters that I'm lucky enough to know. Now, I couldn't think of a bigger character for the first episode than my guest, Phil Powers. We go way back and talk for over an hour, all things from Phil's beginnings to the many interesting things he's done over his near 30-year career. There are quite a few stories we had to leave out, as if they went public, we'd both be locked up. Before we get into it, this is the first podcast I've ever done, so feel free to provide feedback, abuse, whatever you want. On the Twitter, I'm at Josh T. Faulkner. On Instagram, it's at the Josh Faulkner. Hopefully, you enjoy listening as much as I enjoyed making it. Now sit back and enjoy as Phil Powers does the rounds with Josh Faulkner. Professional wrestler, promoter, referee, wrestling ring engineer, and at one point, reality TV star. Am I missing anything?
I think that's just about enough there for you, Josh.
But we'll talk about those things as we go on. But I'm trying to think. We go back quite a long way, and I knew of you before I got into wrestling. I saw you wrestling on bills across the southeast that I would go to. Ones off the top of my head include you wrestling Nick Aldis in High Wycombe back in 2008.
Oh, you see that, did you?
It's funny because the other day, having so much time on my hands to go through my stuff, I dug out my backstage pass pack from that show.
I was wrestling Nick quite a lot at that period. I think it was when Nick first come in.
It's odd because that being 2008, I think it was just before he done Gladiators.
Yeah, well, the thing was with the evolution of Nick Aldis, it took him a little while to find his place.
Yeah,
and he was very pan-faced in the beginning, but he got past that and he obviously become a very good polished worker. And I think at that High Wycombe time would have probably been when Nick was starting to get good. So yes. I think it'll be a good match because he was rough around the edges right at the beginning when he first stepped in the ring. He was very he had no facial expression and he was like a plank of wood to begin with. But he eventually relaxed, he softened, and he got himself a lot better.
Another face that I saw you wrestle was Tony Spitfire, and that goes back to 2009 at the Beck Theatre in Hayes.
No, definitely. I probably wrestled Spitty at that time. I would say probably about 250, 300 times. I probably wrestled him in the period of about 4 years.
I'll start with my professional beginnings with you. Ultimately, I owe a lot to you for many things I've done in my own career, and not just as an opponent and a friend, but as a mentor as well. So I first met you in January 2011 at the Fairfield Halls on my very first job for Brian Dixon. You were doing the ring that day, and I don't have any recollection of the match itself, other than that there was a G at the end because you also worked later on in a 6-man tag.
I remember the night. I can't... it might have actually been a daytime show. Was that a daytime show on a Sunday?
It was a Sunday afternoon. It was a 3 o'clock show.
3 o'clock. Yeah, I remember that. Well, I would have been quite rushed because they, at the Fairfield Halls at that time, the church used to do work on, they would hold a service in the Fairfield Hall that used to finish, I think it was something like 2 o'clock. And
wow.
The ring carry was always quite difficult. And me trying to be He-Man a lot of the time would tackle it by myself. And I remember getting to the venue probably quite early and finding out, that's what the situation is. So it would have been a very fast, let's get the ring up quickly.
I remember being obviously very nervous that day, and you gave me the honour of carrying in a board.
Well, there you go.
But as I said, I couldn't cast my mind back to actually pick up on the details of the match that we had, but it couldn't have been that bad as I still got work for Brian, and many of my early jobs were actually on with you. I think we must have done that match several times over the months that followed.
Yeah, I remember the first one, but it's always a building process. When someone new comes along, it's your job to make them good. It's your job to make things good, and you've got to do that for the show.
So I touched on my beginnings. Can you pinpoint the moment where you thought to yourself, I'm going to be a wrestler?
This is going to sound really strange, but for me, it was the first time that I actually see a British wrestling match, and I was on a holiday in Malta, and was really young. I probably wasn't any older than 11. And they used to have a room in which they had a projector. It was like sort of like Holiday Park, but in Malta kind of affair, the Mistral Village.
Butlins, Malta.
Yeah, and like Big Daddy was on, and I remember watching it, and the rep kept on coming up saying, "You like the wrestling really good. Maybe we have wrestling here." And
wow.
And I was like, "Oh wow!" And like, I just remember seeing that, and like ever since after that, it was just like a big moment on British wrestling in Malta. And then I started doing my investigations, and it was like the British wrestling, and like I kept stumbling across the posters in Chelmsford, and when I got old enough, like I think I was 13 to be allowed to go, I went with my brother. And like, funny story, he wanted to go with my other brother. He got 2 tickets for the wrestling for him and my other brother, but my dad wouldn't let my other brother go because it was on the night of swimming training, and it meant he would have missed his swimming training. And he was training to actually, well, he was very high standard, like he almost went to the Olympic kind of standard. Well, I think he beat somebody that did go on to the Olympics. So there was no way my dad was going to let my middle brother miss swimming training. And then at the time, I wasn't quite hitting the times. And my dad just looks at me and he goes, "Well, you might as well go." And I think he made some comment about me not hitting a swimming time. And I think he goes, "It doesn't look like you're going to go. You're going to go to the top swimming, so you might as well go and watch the wrestling." And I was like, yes.
So Chelmsford is where you grew up?
Yeah, Chelmsford. I was actually brought up in a village called Danbury, which is like a Roman, one of the, as you know, the Romans first went to Colchester. Well, Danbury was the next stop, and I think Danbury actually played a big part in the Roman Empire at the time. And it was like a treasure hunt village, you know, very, very historical village.
It was your swimming, not hitting a swimming time that sort of led to you going along to the wrestling. Were you sporty growing up? I think from what I've been told, probably from yourself, was that you were swimming to quite a high level.
All of my childhood, luckily, was just sport. From the second I was brought up, it was I was no good at football, but they tried me. My dad did try me with that, got me into all the top clubs and everything. But then I played rugby for a little while, and that was good. That was going places. But the thing is, when you start wrestling, and I've done a bit of amateur wrestling too, but the thing is, with the communities around here, as soon as I started doing pro wrestling, I was disqualified from doing other things. I wasn't allowed to do the amateur anymore because the amateur wrestling team wouldn't let me do amateur wrestling because I spoke about pro wrestling too much. And the rugby club kicked me out because I started pro wrestling.
So you say you were going to the bills. You went to your first one at 13. Do you remember who was on the bill at the first show you went to?
I can tell you the main event now.
Go ahead.
Marty Jones versus Crusher Mason. That was that was the main event, and it was absolutely electric.
Was it joint promotions promoting those shows?
All-Star Wrestling, Bill.
And was it just the whole? So when you first went and you saw Marty Jones and Crusher Mason, did that have you hooked that you were going back once? Was the shows once a month? Were they every week, or what was this? What was the setup?
I was only a 13-year-old boy, and I will be on it. I'll be completely and utterly honest with you. It was completely real to me, 100% real.
As it should be.
It was real. It was real to everyone in the crowd as well. It was real from the second you queued up and you got there. It was real, and like I'll never forget at the end. Like I was at the second row, and every time Crusher Mason would come near, I was getting ready to run.
Right.
And like,
that's a good villain right there.
I'll never forget. Right at the end, like everyone was patting him on the head as they left, and I was like, he pats him on the head, and I didn't have the bottle to pat him on the head, and I think I legged it halfway out the door. I'm like, no chance. I haven't got the balls to pat him on the head. No way.
So would you say that's where you got the bug going to see that, and the realism of it really captivating you? Did it spark you to go to the other halls? Were you following the shows around? Were you?
Absolutely. I started obviously doing going to as many shows as I could. When I got to 14, I went to a couple of the Whitton Public Hall shows that Tom Thumb had run. I remember seeing Blondie Barrett and Johnny Kidd on those shows. It was good. It was good, but obviously a little bit slower than the All Star show, but really good. Really, really good, enjoyable, but you could tell a little bit of difference, but it was still electric.
Sort of following on from this, what was your way into the job?
Well, I the first little taste I got was I went up to one of the guys that was helping with the rings. I must have been about 14 and a half, and I just said, I would be interested in doing some wrestling. So
right, and who was that? Do you remember the name?
Actually, a guy called Kevin Richmond. Kevin.
Right, okay, that name's very familiar to me.
And this is why I will always Kevin was the first person I ever approached and said, I would like to do this wrestling. I reckon that I'd be able to defend myself to an extent, and maybe the crowd would like me, I'm quite athletic. I'm jogging every day, going to the gym every day, doing all of this. And he gave me his telephone number.
Right. So this was back when a grown man giving his contact number to a 14-and-a-half-year-old child essentially wasn't a thing that was frowned upon.
No, Kevin wasn't trying to pedo me. Kevin didn't look at me and that's a nice tidy boy. And I had long hair at the time. My hair was down to me back at the time.
Whoa.
I don't think those thoughts were going on inside Kevin's head, because Kevin then spoke to me like I was a div as well.
So you won't be starting your Me Too movement on Twitter trying to get Kevin thrown out of the British wrestling community for inappropriate misconduct in the late 80s, the early 90s.
There was no misconduct, because Kevin was more like, okay, then, you little idiot, do that then. I think he used to call me the little twat.
And it's funny because that role is reversed now to some of the names that you call Kevin.
No, I love Kevin. But anyways, all right then, you little twat. There we go, down there, you little twat. But I did meet up. I remember meeting up with him and doing some training with him, and I went and got myself a pair of wrestling boots. And one of the shows at Chelmsford, Kevin had promised that a few of us could get in the ring before the show. So we got in the ring before the show at Chelmsford, and there was me with me. I'd gone out and got a pair of wrestling boots, which I thought was what you had to do at the time. The first thing I done was got a pair of wrestling boots before I'd had a match.
Where did you get them from? Because I'm sure that period of time, the late 80s, early 90s, you couldn't go on Richard Bishop's Ringside Boots website and order yourself a pair, and they arrived a few days later.
There was a shop in Epping Forest that used to sell wrestling gear, and it was advertised in the Yellow Pages, and it even had wrestling gear written as part of the sports attire that it done. I forget the fella's name now. I completely forget his name, but I remember when I got measured for the boots, when he was paid, he goes to me, he says, "Oh, well, I think it's really nice that you're paid up front. Most of the members of the wrestling fraternity still owe me money from 5 years ago."
And as soon as you heard that, you thought, you know what, I'm going to take that bit of advice on board.
No, what happened was that I'd done this training at Chelmsford, and anyway, it gets to about 7:30, 8 o'clock, and I'm just hovering. Probably nobody's come up and spoke to me. I've probably been sitting on one of the chairs in the corner by myself, just observing what's going on with everyone, not really knowing or understanding what's this idiot doing in the corner. I'm that insignificant to anything that's going on. Nobody knows me who I am. And then one of the, I think it was Derek goes, "Your wrestling boots, Phil, your wrestling boots." And I'm like, what? "Oh, there's a wrestler short," and one of them wondered if they could borrow your wrestling boots to do it at a show. So I ended up that night lending my wrestling boots to James Mason, who had just started. I think he had probably been wrestling about 6 months, but he was traveling about the shows, already doing the shows. What happened to me was there, like my mum was like, she left the family, but she had like settled down with another fella that lived in like the villages 2 down from us. Right. And like he actually he had a corner shop and he had a lot of contacts. And I've been doing this little bit, and like everyone kept on saying that. He kept on saying to me, he's like, well, like if you're doing that wrestling, like Kevin's a lovely bloke, but he will only get you so far. But no, like I was like, like what you need to do is you need to be under like a real big wrestling coach. And there was a guy that had been on the radio that had opened up these gyms called Hammerlock Wrestling.
The infamous Hammerlock Wrestling.
At the time, it was actually Sledgehammer School of Wrestling. And it was like an army barracks kind of place. I think it was like an old military unit in Folkestone, with a ring in it that was like as grotty as you could possibly imagine. But he not only was he advertising on all the radio, he had also started advertising in all the magazines and everything. So
Hammerlock was the first professional wrestling school in the UK.
There was wrestling gyms and wrestling clubs since the beginning, since like in Wigan, probably throughout the centuries. There's been wrestling groups that have been doing wrestling. There's already been wrestling training congregations, but at that moment, the wording, the wrestling training session, now being like a wrestling school, kind of made it sound like a school like you go to. So for all of us kids that were at school, we're now going to wrestling school, if you understand what I mean. And that's kind of like what Hammerlock become in the 90s. So all the kids, whether you're at school in London, schools in Essex, or even like up north, they used to come down. It was the first one promoted like a school, and the wording is what caught it. To say it was the first wrestling training centre would be absolutely ignorant to the past. Like Marty Jones is on video training in a wrestling group. Like he's been through all the top gyms in Wigan. Like they were like expert wrestling groups, you know, like that's the beginning. But when you come into the wording of wrestling school, yeah, that was Hammerlock, the first one to brand it as a school.
Are we saying that Andre Baker was the first person to commercialise the wrestling school as it's known today?
Like, I could imagine at all of these clubs before, they would have had to have paid a sub. You know, if like it'll be turning up on a farmer's grounds with a ring with a barn in it, and I could imagine that they would have all had to have paid a bit of money. Or what I've also heard from Mark Billington, and I hope he doesn't mind me sharing this information, but what Ted Bentley done, and I hope this is from Mark Billington. He said what happened with Davy Boy and Dynamite was they would train on his land in his ring, and in return, he didn't want no money off of anyone. What he would do is he used to have a greengrocery round, and they would get on their bikes and deliver the fruit and veg to local people in the community every now and again for him as like a way of like you do your training, barter back, you know, rather than it being a big commercialized thing, which in many ways I think is how it should be done today. That's my opinion personally, only because, and like, everyone's got to make a living. If you're making a living out of a training school, like that's absolutely brilliant. I know people that are making livings out of training schools. That's fantastic. But where I think the job has sunk in quicksand and has scooped down and it has gone kaput, and it's such a sad thing, is that unfortunately at times we have been guilty of the trainees and the training schools financing pro stuff to happen.
I think one of the things that goes around, as listed on your Wikipedia profile, is that you were trained by Johnny Kidd. Was that an aspect of when you were turning up to the shows and Johnny Kidd would be on the bill and he'd show you a few things in the ring before the doors opened, or?
I did a bit with Johnny Kidd, and I learned an absolute lot from Johnny Kidd. But like, I've only got one conspiracy as to why I would have said that at the time, and like, I think like that the person that rang me up for Wikipedia would have probably have been in early 2000s, and at that point, I couldn't. I was. I hate to say it, but I was probably angry with Hammerlock at the time, and angry with how things ended and some of the things that Andre Baker had done, that I didn't want to give Andre Baker the publicity of saying that I'd done a lot of my training at Hammerlock, and that was probably the place where I'd done my majority amount of training. Johnny Kidd is that guy that a lot of people have walked past, and a lot of people don't like realise it, and like they like even like a lot of people will be like they won't acknowledge it. But like, there lays probably the most experienced and the best, most talented and most knowledgeable human being for ins and out holds of professional wrestling of the catch and can style. And he's actually capable and still can get in the ring and do it. Johnny Kidd may be the most capable and knowledgeable catch-can wrestler on the face of the planet. Now, a lot of the time, like people just don't, like, the youngsters aren't tapping into that, and we're not tapping into that. And like, I think in many ways, like Johnny Kidd is the person that you need to go to if you want to look into the crystal ball.
No, I completely agree with you because, well, from both sides of it, but being around Johnny Kidd and actually being in the ring with him, either tagging with him or wrestling him, I think there is so much that anyone can learn from John. And I think now we find us in the situation that we're in. Now is the perfect time, and YouTube's at everyone's disposal. I think everyone should be on there looking at Johnny Kidd matches.
I agree totally. The thing is, when you have the longevity of somebody like John, who you know, he'll probably be 80 years old and look 45, and no one will know he's 85. 70 years time, there'll be Johnny Kidd well into his hundreds, still turning up doing the match, but it's a secret that he's actually 125. You know, no, it's a guy that just keeps on like propping up and doing it all.
He might have retired about 50 times in between then, but he'll still be showing up and putting the ring up.
Yeah, oh no, definitely. But if you're at a show, pick his brain. If you're a
absolutely,
wrestler, don't walk past him. Don't like not acknowledge him. Don't like turn your nose up. Johnny Saint versus Johnny Kidd, those matches, like incredible. Like the free ones you got, Steve Gray, Johnny Kidd, and Johnny Saint. You know, as far as the catchers can style, they were the free top of the game technical wrestlers. There wasn't three that could touch them. One guy that could always keep up with them was Tom Thumb. He could always keep up with them, but because he was a little bit smaller, he weren't like going to be the media flash for that style. Like Johnny Saint was the media flash for that style, and rightfully so. But next to him, you've got Johnny Kidd and Steve Gray.
Going back in that time machine, you mentioned Hammerlock. Hammerlock was known for producing some of the best wrestlers to come out of the country. A few off the top of my head: Doug Williams, Jody Fleisch, Johnny Storm. We could be here a while listing many of the names that came out of there. But were those guys around when you were going down there?
Oh yeah. I was chummy with Alex Shane. I was chummy with Doug. I was like, Johnny Storm was the first ever time I got to wrestle at the Chancellor Hall, Chelmsford, which was actually the last match that ever happened at the Chancellor Hall, Chelmsford. I closed the hall. That's why I had to bloody reopen it when I run a wrestling show. I couldn't live with that. The last wrestling match that ever happened in a historical wrestling building. I'm like, no, I've got to do another one there. I don't want to be remembered as the guy that had the last ever match at the Chancellor Hall jumps.
It's funny you say that, because the last match on a Brian Dixon bill at Butlins Bogdan Regis was Josh Faulkner and Doug Williams versus Chris Kay and the Mighty Oak.
In the big, oh wow.
So I think I do have to go back and
hopefully it'll happen. But anyway, that night Johnny Storm was in the crowd.
Right.
and like he was chanting out, like, I think I was young and green and all of that line. I think I said something to Johnny Kidd during the match,
Right.
and he picked up on it. And I don't know whether I was goading Johnny Kidd, come on, hit me harder than that, John. Come on, you could, or whatever I was doing, you know. But I believe that Johnny then shouted it out and laughed. So he was hovering afterwards when we got changed. He was hovering, and I think somebody else picked up on it, and they were like, it was kind of like a case of like, you want to be a wrestler, then, do you? And it was like, yeah. And Andre Baker had heard it because he was in the audience that night, and he was like, we'll get him down to the Hammerlock gym and we will beat the fuck out of both of them. I apologise for swearing.
No, we've not yet set the age range for the podcast, but 20 minutes ago we were touching it. We were touching on the subject, literally. If you pardon the pun, on you being abused as a child.
We were fornication under control of King. Johnny fornication under control of King, but he wasn't Johnny Storm then, and it was him and the other one. And like, I went up and spoke to him, but like the thing was, like, what was originally to get them down to the gym to like beat them up, ended up in like a few phone calls where I really liked him, you know. And it was like, well, he's actually all right. No, but that was the initial thing. But when he got down there, yeah, they got given a really hard time, but they fit in. And straight away, I think, even though like they were brought down there for that, straight away, I think Andre Baker did see potential in Johnny Storm, and also Robbie the Rocker Thomas, who was Johnny's mate, who was just as good as Johnny at the time, in all fairness. And if he would have carried on wrestling, he would have probably been just as big a name as Johnny Storm.
Moving on from that, so you were commuting from Chelmsford to Folkestone for your training. I presume is it a once a week thing?
It was weekends, but I did on the side start doing some training with a few other people locally. I found a little hut on one of the farms that had a kickboxing ring up on it, and 2 or 3 times a week I would go there and just go through some training with people that had been to Hammerlock but weren't very good, and I had a little crew of them, but it was all very hush-hush. It was just me and about 12 mates, really. Nobody was to have known that was going on at the time, because if Andre would have found out, he would have killed me.
How dare you try and open up your own wrestling school? I
wouldn't call it a training school. We were just really meeting up and training in a particular location. But like a couple of them done a few matches and done a few things, but none of them are around to tell the tale today. Well, a guy called Mark Oman might be, you know, he wrestled in a mask. He was part of that, but he was the only one that I took to do about 5 matches. None of them went on to do matches.
So you're doing that for a little while. You're commuting between Chelmsford and Folkestone. You're doing your training in your own time with a little crew you've assembled. It's not long after you find yourself in the ring on your very first match at the King's Hall in Herne Bay with a man that I learnt a lot from in my early days, and that's John Ritchie. What was your thought? Was you told in advance that you were going on with John, or was it sort of sprung upon you on the day? And what was your thoughts on that day of your first match?
Oh, I found out 5 minutes before the match started. Like back then, if you was a kid and you was getting into it, everything was on a whim. You was told to turn up, have your bag. They would ring you up and they would say, "Come, have your bag." They wouldn't go, "You're on." It'll be like, "Come, bring your bag. You don't have to pay for a ticket."
Right.
That was more like, make sure you got your bag with you. I took my bag to that show, and it was just like a hint. If you go to the King's Hall Herne Bay and you have your bag with you tonight, you may get put on. It was a tip-off. You used to get tip-offs through wrestling people. Like, they would ring you up and they would say, "I'm just going to give you a tip-off. There's a show tonight in Corby. Scott Conway's running it. If you turn up with your bag, you might get on." That he's been ringing about asking people to do it. So you would just go to the venue with your bag. A lot of the time I was lucky because I could meet up with Tom Thumb and get to the shows with him, because I figured out that he had a van that was coming from Braintree. So Tom Thumb was the get-to man. I could give him the labour to help him with the ring. Not that I was any good at doing the ring when I first started, because that's the funny thing about it. Tom Thumb will tell you I was the worst ring help when I was 14, 15 that you can imagine.
Oh, how times have changed.
Oh, no, I was the worst ring help. I will put my hands up and I'll say that. You ask Tom Thumb who his worst ring help was when he was 14, and he will say me. I was the worst ring help ever. I did not have a clue. I got in the way, got things wrong, done everything wrong, cried and like literally, and then begged and just says to myself, I'm gonna get this right, and I'm not gonna stop till I get this right. And then when I do get it right, I'm not gonna stop till I get it even better. Then when I get it even better, I'm not gonna stop till I get it even more better, because I was haunted with how bad I was as a ring help.
It's good that you've got that mentality of that, because you don't see much of that mentality of, if I get it wrong, I know I'm getting it wrong, and I'm going to do all I can to get it right.
Tom Thumb would have said to me when I was a kid, go and get a hammer, I'd have come back with a saw. he would have said, go to the board, go and fetch go to the van and go and fetch the plastic tarpaulin. I would have gone to the van and I would have fetched one of the bloody metal clips for one of the boards, and like just like, I remember once he was trying to explain to me how to get the canvas on, and in the end there was probably an audience of about 20 people watching around laughing because I couldn't get it right. And I tell you what, now this is no joke. Everywhere I'd be crowds of them laughing, and then they'd stooge me off, and they'd all just be watching me and laughing. It would be like, oh my goodness gracious me! Like we've got the most stupid child with us today that you could possibly ever imagine in your life. And these people would stand around and they would watch me. I was that bad.
So this was your baptism of fire into the world of wrestling, would you say?
Yeah, but the penny dropped.
And how long after your first match at the King's Hall in Herne Bay did the penny drop?
Oh, the penny hadn't dropped then. I didn't even know what my own name was.
No, how long after that? Because I mean, I realised it myself that for me, it was at least a good year before I thought, okay, it's slowly getting to me now what the job is and what my role in the job is.
When I left Hammerlock, I quickly learnt the penny hadn't dropped, because I went from like having I was this real big like following, doing all the flying stuff, and then I got on the Bryan shows and I was really protected in tag matches and being the Power Ranger. I'd do a lot of tag matches, tagging with like even people like Pat Roach and that. But I was really protected and looked after. But the problem was I wasn't doing like any of the moves that I used to do before. And I'd put on a little bit of weight. And then I had about 6 months when everything was awful. Everything I'd done was awful. It had gone from being good and passable, and then it just went jump downhill. Absolutely terrible. I was having bad match after bad match after bad match. And then when I went, I got invited to go to the North for Stevie Night, and it was actually for a guy called Darren Ryder. It was just out the blue. Before this, it was just I was on a bad bad match after bad match after bad match, but it had been good, but it was just going so downhill, and I was so depressed at the time because of it, and I'd bulked up a little bit. Started like having me syrup in me porridge, which had made me probably a little bit chubbier rather than the lean self I'd been for a period. So I'd probably slowed down a little bit. And then I went to the North with Stevie Knight, Darren Ryder, Tiger McGuigan, and myself. And the referee would be whoever was on park.
So these were doing the holiday camps in the North East?
North Circuit, which is Primrose Valley, Caton Bay. We used to they've done the Scarborough Hotel. Stevie Knight, look him up. The guy is somebody that should have been a national celebrity that for some reason wasn't a national celebrity, Stevie Knight could have been Johnny Vegas. A guy is so funny, he's hilarious, he'll have you in stitches, and like in wrestling, he was absolutely he was a good wrestler. He could do it, but he didn't really want to get hurt, So, there was a period where he didn't mind getting on the top rope and doing a few little moves, but he didn't want to hurt himself. He didn't want to injure himself. So he would get by more on his personality. He took those bumps and he was, I don't really like that, And I could tell his body didn't like it, So he never had the longevity. But as far as standing up on stage, but his career was good. When Stevie hit his peak, he was a main eventer, a main event standard. You could have put him in a main event at any hall in England. And at that period, when he had hit the peak, he'll be there. But anyway, we got here somehow. How did we get to here?
No, I was asking when for you that the penny dropped. When did it all click for you?
I was there with Stevie and Tiger McGuigan, and when I got there, I didn't really know Stevie that well. I'd met him on a tour, and it was like, if any team could terrorise me that badly and beat it into me, they did that week. They beat me that bad and terrorised me that bad, and made my life that much of hell that week, that thankfully they managed to knock some sense into me. And that's when I really started to lift my game.
The next step for you was into promoting, and you've promoted hundreds of shows over the years. But I want to go back to, when was the first show you promoted? Where was it? Who did you have on, if you can remember that? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Basically, what used to happen back in those days is it would be very common for the shows to be a little bit smaller, but we would group in together, a lot of us, and we would have a share of the show each.
Okay,
so we'd all have a share of the show. So like I'd turn up, and like you would get my labour, and then there would be like a Paul Tyrrell, and like Kevin would do it every now and again too, and Neil would do it. Would do it with Paul Tyrrell, and like they were just, so by the time we would get out of most of these affairs, it would all be split by 4 people. So instead of paying wages, we were splitting it, and then there'd be a deal with the merchandise and things like that. And it was just kind of like, as my partners were drifting and not wanting to do it anymore, I ended up doing a lot of them on my own. But that was never out of choice, really. There was times when I've run shows on my own, and I've been pining because I had been missing my past partners.
Well, you touched on it moments ago, where coming into promoting shows, it was more of a joint enterprise thing. Do you remember the first show you ran as an individual promoter?
I do, actually. It was the Town Hall Waltham Abbey, and I used to run this place quite a lot, sometimes on a fortnightly basis, believe it or not.
And when would this have been, this first show of your own in Waltham Abbey?
Well, Fummy didn't want to do it anymore. Basically, what happened was, when I was younger, Monday nights were taken up with wrestling, because Waltham Abbey Town Hall had bought wrestling shows weekly at the Waltham Abbey, and it was just a case of Fummy picked me up, and it was like, we're going to be doing this one every week for a few weeks. And I'm like, oh yeah, and he goes, yeah, it's all cool. So we turned up, and we done it for a fella called Jim Vicks Morris, and the venue, and every single show only had about 3-4 matches. It were very small crews every week, and we'd built ourselves up a nice little audience over time. It started at about 30 people a week, and like the next week they got to 60, and like even a wrestler that wrestles today was a member of the audience there, because there was an incident where he goaded Bull Pratt, and Bull Pratt choked him out in the middle of the ring in front of everyone, which is probably what killed it. That's when Jim Vicks Morris lost it anyway. So that incident happened. So we've built this hall up to 70 people once a week on a Monday.
And you were running those shows. Who were some of the faces that were appearing at Waltham Abbey Town Hall every Monday?
Oh, anyone and everyone, Like, I'd done them a lot. I think James Mason jumped on the bandwagon of a few Mondays, but it was actually a lot of like the old names. Before I started running it, it was a few of the old names. Like, it was a guy, like, you had Butcher Bond used to do the shows, Bull Pratt used to do the shows, Jim Vicks Morris, Mel Sanders would do the shows, Johnny Kidd would do the shows. Jim Vicks Morris had a brother, Tim Vicks Morris. He would be on a lot of the shows. So they were the usual suspects, Dave Bond, and there were a couple, like, just guys that worked for joints that you wouldn't see anywhere else, that had all of a sudden been dragged up as part of this every Monday at Waltham Abbey deal. And of course, Tom Thumb as well. And like it was those Mondays at Waltham Abbey, before I hit that moment where I did regress a little bit. I think it was those moments at Waltham Abbey that kept me going. They kept me fit.
Oh, I can imagine if it's a weekly thing as well. And I take it on times. You must have been working once, twice, 3 times a show, possibly on the occasion.
A lot of the time, twice, because there was a lot of tournaments and a lot of secondary matches. We used to do it quick. It was a little bit like a bingo night in the little hall, but they would just have wrestling every week there. And it was a little hidden paradox. But then the Jim Vicks Morris incident happens, and they're only going to buy the show for another 2 weeks.
Right.
We've got 2 more weeks We've got 2 more weeks left of this gig. So Tom Thum says to the venue manager, well, like, why don't we hire the hall? How much would it be for the hall? We'll hire the hall and do the wrestling. So then we carried on doing it for a little while. But I think there was an incident where there was a riot, bit of a riot at one of them. Because what would happen as well is every now and again we would get people from the Waltham Abbey travelling community come to the show too.
Right.
And it would only be about 30, 40 of them. And we, like, certain members of the crew would let them get away with it. But then there would be times when it would practically end in a ruck if you had certain teams on that, like, smelt the trouble. And I think there was a bit of a fight situation at one of the shows, and that's when it toned down to every now and again. But it didn't tone down to every now and again because of it being bad. It toned down every now and again because of it being a security risk.
So you still run shows now. What's changed since you first started promoting?
It's completely different now to what it is then. It is completely, it's a different, it's very over-exaggerated. Like, when we would go into these places and discuss it with them and, like, talk to them and say, like, I'm here as a representative for wrestling because I feel that this area could have a wrestling show. We could put on a wrestling show. Do you feel that you could work with me to do that? And we would build up this camaraderie together. We would be in contact with the tourist information every day. We'll be on first name terms. On many occasions, we all got to know each other a little bit too well. Now it's over-exaggerated. You can see wrestling posters from 2 years ago in every town. As a matter of fact, I will put up an announcement on this podcast to any wrestling promoters that are leaving the posters up in these communities. I'm no angel. I'm no saint in the past. Okay, I'm not going to put my hands up and say that this is something that, like, I may have been guilty of in my 20s too. Slap me with the splintered ruler and punish me. Now, what they're doing is they're postering the local towns.
Yep.
Flooding them full of posters. They're not taking the posters down.
Yeah, big problem.
And they're laying about all over the towns. What we have done is we have snookered ourselves for next time, because when a wrestling poster comes up, it's not fresh anymore. That's a contributing factor to why posters don't work for advertising anymore.
A very topical question to move on to next is, how do you think the current COVID-19 coronavirus, however you want to say it, situation is going to have on British professional wrestling?
Yuck. That's not an easy.
That doesn't sound promising.
It's not an easy question.
No.
From a development standpoint, I think we've got to say to ourselves, what legislation are we going to be under? And can we be starting to think about putting things in place now that could salvage the summer? I don't know what's happening about the summer. I haven't spoken to a person on the subject. The last time I spoke to Brian Dixon was before the COVID crisis, and we had it. There's probably 1,000,001 stories going around the Gossipville at the minute, and I wouldn't rather not talk to anyone. The reason being is I don't want to hear any of the gossip, because I don't want to hear anything until I hear it from the person that actually knows.
So when you say the summer, by that you're meaning the summer camp run.
Yeah, to
explain to those that don't know what that is.
This summer, okay, British wrestling in this summer. I think moving forward, we've got to develop. We've got to start thinking, how can we develop a show that is going to be opening up friendly when things do get opened up, and that will mean the crowd a little bit more spaced out. You're going to lose your atmosphere a bit. It's not going to be as electric as what it was before. Also, this going around into the audience, high-fiving and going up into the 10th row, saying hello to everyone, like introducing yourself to the cleaning lady and getting a reach around off of one of the birds in the corner, you know.
That didn't happen, Phil.
All of that has got to stop. You know.
See, I was going to explain So for those listening, the summer season in British wrestling anyway normally relates to the holiday camp season. What that is for the 6 weeks that the kids break up from school, families that flock to their holiday park. For those 6 weeks, wrestling is brought in as an entertainment act, a cabaret of sorts. I mean, although various holiday parks, they may have that throughout the year, the main season for it is the summer.
Realistically, it is important to British wrestling because right now, as big as like people on the internet would disagree with me, but it is actually the biggest thing that British wrestling has.
This is one thing I want to get off my chest, right? Now, the summer season, it's important for those that are relying on British wrestling and being a British professional wrestler as their full-time income. Now, this being in jeopardy isn't good for them, but what I've been seeing since the COVID crisis has reached its peak over here, it is very grim scenes on social media, almost scenes of desperation. What's your take on this?
My personal stamp on it is it's the social media trap, innit? The social media swamp. And social media is a swamp. I myself become victim of the swamp. I'm not going to deny that for a second. I end up on social media and I get swamped in too. And I think what I advise any British wrestler right now, get yourself out the swamp. There is poison in that swamp. That swamp will lead you to absolutely nowhere.
With what you say, it's funny you call it a swamp, because do you think that if you're a freelance professional in any form of entertainment, you should always have a subconscious part of your brain that's predicting this swamp, and you should be prepared for that swamp? I don't want to be negative here, because I love that there are people over here that can call British professional wrestling their full-time job, but we've got to be realistic here.
It's scary to look at right now because I've managed to with strength within a strength. I've managed to keep myself away the last week and a half.
What advice would you give to an individual relying on British professional wrestling as their source of income at a time like this?
Stay off the Evil Blue app. Yeah, it's all well good to congregate together, but you can very easily say the wrong thing and finish your career.
How does British wrestling find its way out of this situation in the best way possible? How does it move forward from this?
I don't think it's going to happen fast, and I think small congregations, smaller teams perhaps would be my suggestion. Towning down the numbers of wrestlers on the shows. So, like, if you were running a big roster, try like a 6-man roster. Like maybe do afternoons and matinees and get wrestlers to leave and things like that. Make sure the changing rooms aren't crowded. Limit the people that are hovering. It won't hurt to enter a moment in time where a lot of people that are in the venue are actually in the queue out the door. So make it stricter to get into a wrestling venue so that when the ring's being set up, it's only the ring man and the ring man's help. And the people that have to be there are in there, not just people in there for no reason. Even wrestlers, keep them out until a certain time. And then, like, obviously, less wrestlers on the show, have people spaced apart in the changing room. Obviously, the testing implications will be there, making sure the rings are kept clean, but making sure the wrestlers are kept hygienic. And then it'll be social distancing the crowd. But who manages this, whether it's the wrestling promoters or they have to bring in a security guard to do it, in which that could actually be a role of a wrestler with a security badge. That would be the only way we can survive, by putting all of these resources together.
Now, if you ask me, I think it's going to be a while before British wrestling shows are back taking place. And I think it's going to affect entertainment across the board, especially wrestling thriving off the interaction from a live. I mean, don't get me wrong, we've seen these no fan shows doing it well. I mean, whether it was Alex Shane and his crew pulling it off, or WWE that have been doing it.
I like it.
It is, but I think there's only so long you can do that before you think, okay, we are a form of entertainment that has been known to thrive off the interaction of a live crowd.
And I understand that moment probably hit before WrestleMania, but we're just going to have to make do and grin and bear it. There's there's an old fashioned saying, sometimes you have to eat shit and enjoy the taste of it, and that's what wrestling fans are going to have to just do on this occasion. Don't be critical at this moment in time. Enjoy it the most you can, and if you're lucky, you might get something a little bit better than shit when we ease down. Enjoy it and be grateful that you're getting that, and don't whine about it because you're happy, you're lucky to have it, and you should be happy.
No, absolutely. I'm going to take the next question back a little bit to the previous topic in terms of when you are promoting shows. When it comes to the booking of the shows you're running, what is it that you're looking for?
I like a lot of life and a lot of energy in the wrestling. I like a lot of realism. And also, the other thing people have got to remember as well nowadays is when, like, most of the shows are at the weekends, we rarely run during the week because midweek entertainment's taken such a hit in the UK.
Yeah.
Whether it would work again moving forward, that all depends how our mentality goes after the COVID periods. But our mentality going from like 2005 onwards, like once we got past 2008, midweek out of kids' holidays entertainment practically had become extinct. It was over. It was done. Whether midweek entertainment picks up again or not after this COVID period, I would love for it to. And I think there could be something in that, people wanting to do something more midweek. But at the weekends, the answer to your question is every single wrestler gets booked in advance, big time in advance. It's so difficult to get people now. Even booking people a month away, it's practically like their diaries are booked 6 months in advance, mainly with shows that get cancelled. You know, like, so you ring people up and it's more difficult to, oh no, I'm working for Joe Bloggs on that day. But like sometimes you can only really structure your card 3 days before, because like then you ring about these people and make sure if their shows are still on or if they actually are free is the only way you're going to get a decent bill a lot of the time. I bet you if I got in contact with half the wrestlers now and said, could you do that date, they'd already be booked.
As well as promoting the hall shows, you were also running shows on the holiday park circuit, and these are regarded, we've touched on this previously, and these are regarded by many as the best place to learn the job. And how important were they to you in your development?
They were absolutely everything. I don't think that if you can grin and bear the holiday parks, because don't forget, like for some of the more shoot based wrestlers and for like more like the real sort of like solid Wigan style of wrestlers, that the holiday camps weren't really anything that they would have gone off and enjoyed, you know. But for an athlete that's a little bit more light-hearted and can take having the mickey taken out of themselves and is happy to take the mickey out of themselves, the relationship between that style of wrestler that crosses just from the cauliflower-eared wrestler that doesn't mind having the mickey taken out of him, there is a combination of gold.
No, I agree with the point you made there, because I think for me, they're up there as being the biggest method of development to get me to where I'm lucky enough to have been over the last 9 years as a professional. It's character building. And
also captivating the audience on what you've got that day. There's no backlog of like history of you, you know, from the public. You're going in fresh. And if you're that good, you can convince that audience into believing you're the greatest Roman gladiator of all. With that theory also being said, on Butlins, none of those guys were on TV in the noughties. Not talking about the Dragon, American Dragon and people like that done them in the noughties, but they weren't actually on mainstream TV at that time, so no. What I'm saying is true. Like the teams were that strong that you could put out a named wrestler in the Attitude Era at that moment in time, and they would fall on their ass, and they would get no reaction at all. And then afterwards at the meet and greet, it's just a completely different. So no one in that audience would know who they are. You're a non-entity, and it's your job to turn yourself into an entity, to make it look like you've got to walk out there like you are as big as Brock Lesnar, Drew McIntyre, Randy Orton, any of them. You've got to hold that perception and make them believe, make the crowd believe, you know. And with the reactions we've got over the years, I'm every bit confident we done our job. We pack the tools away, we put that ring in the back of the van, we forget about it, and we just concentrate on getting it right the next day. Because believe it, one day's going to come when you're not going to be able to do it again, Mr. Faulkner.
The best memories I've got of my time in the job thus far are on that holiday camp. So I pinpoint specifically the summer we had 3 years ago, and it was me and you with that core team for that 6 weeks, and we had new faces coming in and out. It just worked.
It was an easy summer that summer. It worked very, very easy, and the heat and reaction was electric.
Oh, absolutely. Everywhere we went, whether I was on with you or we were doing a tag or whatever it is we were doing, we seemed to have that form, not just the format of the show, but the format of the whole run down to a T. There's
certain summers I've done when I've gone like that format was just like something else. That year was an amazing format. The following year we had a newer team, which was like the guys like Arcadius and Luke. He was wrestling at Maxi Muscle.
Right.
We had like the henchman as a more improved henchman from the year before.
Right.
And all of that, and like that season, it was like we was making so much more of an effort, but we wasn't quite getting what we got the year before. We weren't that far behind, but we just weren't there. It wasn't until guys like what's the lad's name? The guy from Devon, Charlie Garrett.
Charlie Garrett, yeah.
Charlie Garrett. When he come on the team, what's his that Harlem Bravado come on the team, and you come on the team, that magic was there. I thought I was gonna collapse and die at the end of like the last 2 summers, but that one I was perfectly fit, and it's because the team was more experienced to the job. The years after, it's a lot of effort, and like you don't. I'm not saying that they weren't hitting high marks. Like there was days where we were probably only gauging a 30%. It was bad, you know. Probably at the start of the week, we were gauging a 30% of where we could have been. But like I think I think at times, like I would say that first year I felt that we was probably about a 97. I'll say 95% because you've always got to give 5% no matter how good it is.
No, massively.
You know,
that's the thing. If you were saying it was 100, it's saying you have no optimism that this could be better, because I think along the same wavelength as you here. I think as perfect as that summer was, there was that something we could have done, but I may not be thinking of it at the moment, but there's something we could have done that could have made it that much better.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like I thought it was good, but there probably was something we could have done to have made it better. No, like the reaction was brilliant. It was electric. But sometimes when you think something's really good, you have to draw yourself back and you have to say to yourself, where are my rose-tinted glasses? And that's if everyone starts going on about how good something is in the wrestling. You will notice straight away, if everyone's raving on about a great worker, if Brian doesn't really know him or seen him yet, he'll be the first one to reel everyone back and go, it wasn't that good. Let's not get carried away. The rose-tinted glasses are on.
No, I agree. And just to put this into context for those listening, I'm sure if this is going along to Wrestling Fraternity, they're going to be aware of the schedule that we had. But for those listening that might not be in the know as to what it is we do, so we'd start. We go back to the summer of 3 years ago. We'd start on the Saturday in Hastings. We'd be on the road for 4 days doing 7 shows that would cover the holiday parks from Hastings down to Weymouth. Now, doing 4 shows in 7 days meant that we would find ourselves on some days doing 2 shows. Not only would we be doing the shows, but we'd also be putting the ring up and taking it down in all weathers. And there'd be long drives in between the jobs as well. But there were days that summer we'd done 2 shows, 2 ring jobs, and we still made it to the gym to get a workout in. Now, by the time we got to the church farm in Bognor on the Wednesday, the last show of the week, we were knackered. But speaking personally, I couldn't wait to get going again the next Saturday.
You've got to be a warrior. in the wrestling fraternity, it seems you've got your owner stroke promoters, then you'll have your management, and then the next one down from that really is the captain.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, every good captain kind of gives themselves a vice captain, because I think the vice captain's good for morale, because then they've got someone. So the first thing any captain needs to do is give the vice captain job out. That's what I do. And like that season 2, you was the vice captain. I've had like Chase the Ace was my vice captain for a little while. Zach Zodiac was my vice captain.
Yeah.
I'd Paul Tyrrell as my vice captain, you know, but straight away, always give that. See, you've got your pecking order then, but you get the captain and the vice captain are like the warriors on the field. But then the other people that get brought in now, you will be surprised. Well, you wouldn't be. I'm talking the audience would be surprised at the amount of people that collapse and just cannot carry on after about 2 days of this physical.
We've seen it. We've been there and we've seen it. We're trying. That's the thing. The team morale is important, not just for a pleasant atmosphere. I think for the show as well.
Yeah, they can't go on anymore. But as a captain or a vice captain, if you're seen to be struggling at any moment, the rest of the team struggles.
And that's the thing. I think we put up a good front. You and I would get the double done, and we'd be off to the gym.
Yeah, too bloody. Like that's the thing. Like you do 2 shows, one after the other, then go to the gym, have a training session, then train a little bit harder at the gym, push yourself. You know what I mean? Then go for a run. You know? Then go and have a lay down, and then just go down the beach and take it in turns to punch each other in the stomach.
I think it's like, I can't recall any of that happening that summer of 2017. It might have done, but
do this by the end. You know, like we're wrestlers at the end of the day. If we want to class ourselves as being supermen, we have to also be able to do superhuman things outside of the ring, and if that means going to the gym straight after doing 2 shows and then doing something else that's going to punish yourself after that, then why not? We don't talk about sleeping for 14 hours afterwards. You don't talk about like crashing out at 7 o'clock and then waking at 6 o'clock the next day. You know, it's like, yes, I do that, go to the gym, like do that madness, but then it's not a case that I'll be out partying till 2 o'clock in the morning. But actually, that's where I went wrong on season 2, because it crossed over both a little bit too much. I had to rein it in, you know. The noughties, they used to encourage you to go out on park art, because then, like, especially like when I was on that Tiger McGuigan's team, they used to thank you for coming out. And they used to try and give you jobs on security and things like that back in those times. So like if you were still there, that'll be brilliant. We can have another 4 security guards tonight. Make sure you all come down. So we'll go down there. Then like, you get free drinks all night. Then at the end of the night, the bar manager will come up and give you all for like £25 each.
Definitely, Andy.
Security in the club as well. If you think I'm lying, ask Stevie Knight. He was the one that.
I'm not doubting it. And also, I think we need to talk on this as well. The caravan cleaning.
Yeah, well, Stevie Knight got everyone that wanted to do it jobs cleaning caravans.
Didn't this caravan cleaning gimmick work its way into the show format?
Yeah, because like, well, Stevie Knight, because he had been cleaning caravans to make a little bit of extra money on the park after the show. It's like, well, you can go down there, do your wrestling match, then sell your photos, and then like we can go wash caravans for like 3-4 hours and get paid for it. So like he had this little deal going where he had like he thought it was the best thing ever. Like, yeah, guys, I've got some extra money. We're gonna make we'll be able to make an extra 25 quid each. What's that? Oh, we got us the job of washing the caravans on park.
Wouldn't it make it the stipulation, the final match, the loser of this match has to go caravan cleaning?
Well, it was nothing to do with the show at all. It was like we were doing it on these parks, and like Stevie was the villain and I was the baby face, and as Stevie was washing the caravans, all the kids were walking past going, "That's what a loser does. A loser washes caravans." The loser washes the caravans, and I'm around the other side, like doing my bit on the caravan, all right. So the next day we were doing the show, and Steve I know how we'll get round this one. I think this was the following week, and he goes, I know how we'll get round this week. And he goes, and if I lose this match, I will wash caravans on Blue Dolphin for the rest of the week. So then we've done the caravans. The baby faces will just hide their head, like that.
Wearing the mask.
And the villains would get the abuse, but it works in well. And it kept a little bit of extra money cleaning caravans after the show.
Everyone's a winner.
Yeah, we're doing it as big stars, but then if they need people to wash caravans because they're short-staffed and it's only going to take us an hour to quickly go around and do a load of them, and we'll get 25 quid each for doing them, like, okay, another 25 quid before we go. That's how it worked back then. We were in with everyone. We used to enjoy it. We loved it. We were kids.
Happy days. Now, when it comes on to the promoting aspect of these holiday parks, now for the last sort of 5 years, it's been you've not been the promoter, you've been the captain of the team. But there was a period of time, a long time actually, that you were responsible for the overall running. So you were booking the wrestlers, making sure the shows were going ahead on time, writing everything to do with it. So with so many of these shows, you had new faces coming in and out of the team frequently, and you gave a start to so many wrestlers. Who amongst them stands out to you?
What? Who? Josh Faulkner.
I didn't write that question to be the answer, by the way.
Yeah. It would probably have to be, or I'm going to have to say it, and it's nothing against anyone else, but it would be Marty Skell. I always liked Marty in a non-homosexual way.
I mean, no, don't get me wrong. It's 2020. If there was homosexual connotations, it would be welcomed and encouraged.
Not after the pandemic. They're all going to be scared of that.
Marty's gone on podcast in the past, and he's said how it was you that gave him his start on the camps.
Yeah, absolutely. But he was a hell of a talent, and he deserved it. He was another one that didn't get it easy at all. And if you go back into the history of Marty Skell, persistence is what you would learn from the story.
Especially with a season like that. And the seasons back then, I'm sure, were a lot longer than the 6 weeks that they currently stand at.
Yeah. Like, out of that generation, out of any of those younger wrestlers at that moment in time, I had around me in the noughties, I said Marty was the best one. Everyone poo-pooed that. Everyone poo-pooed it. No one accepted that. I would always say, that's the one, there, Marty. And I think the only reason why nobody bloody said, yeah, Marty's the man, is because I said it. No one would.
Right.
That was probably what it is, because I said, that guy there is the man. Everyone, no, he's not. No. And there was something about, like, making sure that Marty didn't get on in All-Star maybe for a little period of time. But that's not giving it to him easy. Like that, I was seen as going, that lad there, he's the one. I was the motivator. I was the pat on the back. You're doing really well, Marty. You're doing brilliant. Yeah, Marty. But for that to have worked, Marty also needed people telling Marty he was a see you next Tuesday as well.
That's the thing. That's the persistence of it. He used that to fuel his persistence.
Yeah. It needed the combination of it. But I was the one that would give him the encouragement. But if he hadn't had everyone else giving him the hard time, it would never have happened, because it's been proved in the future that a few wrestlers that I've mentored in recent times haven't just got the praise off of me, they've then got the praise off of anyone. And unfortunately, it's good to get the praise and it's loving to give the praise. But if you haven't got the bad cop in that chemistry set as well, you don't breed a champion.
It's a fine one to mention as you look at Marty now and what he's doing and what he has done for the last little while.
But the moral of the story is he's set a niche for himself somewhere. A company, Ring of Honor, have shown such an interest in him that like now apparently they're using him as a booker. So for him to go stateside and for a company like that to think that highly of him, and for him to like be a leader and a guider in the future of a company like Ring of Honor is probably just as much, if not more, of an accomplishment in my eyes than main eventing a WrestleMania.
We've touched on Phil Powers, the wrestler, Phil Powers, the promoter. Let's talk Phil Powers, the reality TV star.
Everyone wants to know, whilst you're filming it and developing it, people yawn when you're talking about it and don't believe you. And then when it's all said and buried and done, if you mention it, you're then accused of having a crisis because of not being able to get over it.
You featured on the Channel 4 program Shipping Wars. Originally, you were one of the clients of the show sending a wrestling ring to, was it the south of France? And you must have made quite an impression, because when Series 2 came around, you were cast as one of the couriers.
They got in contact with me because I had my van with me that day, and the whole boom of internet deliveries.
Okay.
The websites like anyvan.com, we was talking about these sites, and we was developing courier websites back in 2002 as part of my logistics. So I was one of the first people to ever do a load for anyvan.com when it first launched. But I done outside of the wrestling because I thought instead of doing courier work where you're going to speak to someone over the telephone, wouldn't it be brilliant if it could all just be done on your computer and you go in there and tender for the job? And that's what that was. So when it come to the TV thing being done, they'd spoken to me and they knew I was a wrestler. They knew I could talk in front of the camera, but they knew that I'd also been a delivery person too. So we could create some fun moments for TV. And I think I manifested it because I remember being out on deliveries doing Harveys all the time thinking this would make pretty cool and funny TV. The situations that you do when you're out delivering, the camaraderie and the banter everyone has together would make fantastic TV. And I remember saying to the producers when they were down doing that, I've visualised this for years. And then like we done the show, and it was well received by all accounts what I'd done. And I didn't really think about it. I didn't even see it when it went out.
Oh, I was a big fan of the show. Yeah. Mainly because the person I saw on the screen was the person that I knew and had known for years before that.
Yeah. And that's why like doing that kind of did help me a lot within the wrestling, because where I stumbled really bad in wrestling was I'd become too much of a known villain to be able to be taken that seriously as a promoter. Because like, say like Mal Sanders is the big villain and everyone's worried and wary of him. Like when you go about and you try to do the business with people, everyone's scared of you.
Yeah.
And I had got to a point where I had turned 30 and I had gone from being a handsome youngster turning up to all of the venues to looking like the bailiffs had knocked at your door.
Right.
When I was going about conducting the business. And that's where things fell apart for me promoting shows, and I'm well aware of it. I know that's where it went wrong running the shows, and but then after getting to doing the Shipping Wars thing and that, I got to a point where I could actually show people that I weren't Filthy Phil Powers, the wrestler that they were starting to think that I was. You know, that I actually was Philip Pohl, this human being that's actually, because nobody actually knew that I promoted any of the shows. None of the punters knew that. I kept that secret. I never shouted that.
It's the Philip Pohl I've known and loved for many years. We've enjoyed many candlelit dinners and holiday parks and romantic strolls along the beach. We went to see Jimmy Carr together. That was one of our first dates.
Yes, it was yes. But no, people do believe you're the wrestling character when that's what they see. And even though they know things are a little bit moody and that, but that's what they start to perceive you as being. So it doesn't take a lot for rumours start to be spread about how you're a psychopath, and it gets more difficult.
Would you do reality TV again?
I would have to consider it only because the shipping wars thing went well, and I wouldn't want to do anything that wouldn't go as well as that. I wouldn't want to do anything that was a downgrade to that. After I'd done that, I started filling out my Star Now and sending like applications, and just before that aired, I started going to a couple of auditions and that. And you know what? They won't even give you a glass of water. They won't even acknowledge you're there. They won't even it's just horrible. Like, and I understand the philosophy of well, you get treated like shit for an hour to then get a 20 grand job if they like you. But like, I don't want to go from like the nice life I have in the wrestling and like that lovely, like I had that moment where they got your Nando's on set if you wanted it, which a lot of the time I'll give to one of the techies they didn't give Nando's to and things like that. Like you got treated really, really well. You got treated with respect and dignity. Like doing shipping wars, the guy that run that, Luke Camberwell, couldn't have treated the people he was around any better. He couldn't have done, you know. He really went the extra mile to make sure everyone was looked after, and to go from that kind of professionalism to like 50% what the wrestling professionalism is, to then walk in on some of those auditions that you find. No, I suppose I'd have to find myself a proper agent if I was to go, and that's not something that just happens. A lot has to happen with that. If it was right, I'll do it, but I won't go down the auditioning out the middle of nowhere. It'd have to be right.
What people forget about you, Phil, is that once you had a hit in the UK Top 500.
Yeah.
Back in 2000. Are we allowed to talk about that?
Yeah, you can mention it.
The thing is, I remember the first time I heard it, it was funny, but it was also genius because that song was, I presume it was written. Was it written by Len Davis?
Yeah. Well, it was literally Len done the music and everything and supplied the girls, and I just done the singing behind it, and it was all ad lib.
It was ad lib, but it was the perfect ad lib for the persona that you play as Filthy Phil Powers.
Yeah, but I was scared when that happened, and then when that went on the charts, because the last thing I wanted to do was get a Right Said Fred moment, and that would like mess my life up locally. I wouldn't be able to like socialise around some of the people that I do in some of the areas that I do without really having the piss taken out of me. I put the brakes on it. As hard as I could. The second that it started to catch a bit of momentum, I was like, no way.
You could have been on top of the pops and everything, mate.
Yeah, but also I'd be banned from the church choir. Any like civilized or dignified services. My dad doesn't even know I ever done it. I've never played it to him. No one knows I No, it's just one of like I've kept it a complete secret, and it like gets dragged out. It's probably, I like to keep it as the biggest secret ever. As good as it would have been, and as much money I could have made out of that, I know like the Project E Firestarter and things like that. Like Keith, like didn't live a million miles away from me, and like these rural areas and everything that you live in, it's all very well and good like to have that moment that's massive in the city, but when you're in these rural communities, people and half look down their nose at you. That would be actually the worst thing that could ever happen to my life. So I was like, as good as it was, as funny as it was, I was like, do not let that get any bigger. I disqualify that now. That does not go any further now. You take that out, you get rid of it, you make sure I will sue if anyone hears that, you know. The look of disgust when you're walking down the country park, yes, and that you could just imagine it in front of the royal family, couldn't you? And Charles going, on this cunt over here Just filthy children, encourages all these wankers in society to behave like total cunts. Shall we kill him now?
Get the paparazzi to the tunnel.
Yeah, this man here needs taking down the alleyway and shooting. He is the one responsible for Let's Get Filthy, that started a movement that has ruined Essex's reputation for generations to come.
Well, let's hope Prince Charles isn't listening to this podcast, because seeing as we've spoken about it, it's only fair that we play the song. So here it is, with Let's Get Filthy, it's Phil Powers.
Let's get filthy! I'm telling you now, tell your missus to stop pecker checking, to get in that kitchen to do some cooking and cleaning, and get out of my face! Look at the state of you! Let's get filthy! Filthy and naughty and mine! Let's get filthy! Makes you the Phil Powers gang! Who's the man? You are! Let's get filthy! Hey son, this is Filthy Phil Powers you're wrestling tonight. So, just remember, that means pain. That means pain. Let's get filthy. Let's get filthy. Filthy and naughty and mine. Let's get filthy. Makes you the Phil Powers gang. Who's the man? You are. Let's get filthy. Tell you what, sweetheart, why don't you come home with me? Why don't you come home with a real man rather than that goofball next to you? Come on, come back with me. Come back with a real man, you know you want to. Bunch of old bow wows. Hey, you little runt, get in this goddamn ring right now, cause you got a match with Filthy Phil Powers. Let's get filthy. Filthy and naughty and mine. Let's get filthy. Makes you the Phil Powers gang. Who's the man? You are. Let's get filthy.
Oh, mate, we'll wind this down now. What does the future hold for Phil Powers?
The answer to that question, Mr. Faulkner, is I've got little aspirations and a few developments in the back of my head that probably never will happen or might do. But like, if I could have one wish, it would be to continue to do things that I've been doing before. No bigger, just at the same pace. I don't want for it to get any bigger. I don't want it to become like absolutely massive. But my wish is for it to hold itself and continue.
That's a fair answer. Phil, you've been the first guest on Doing the Rounds with Josh Faulkner. Thank you for giving your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Faulkner. I hope it wasn't too long. You get bloody whole series out of that.
But we'll edit it down.
How many wanks have you had?
Oh, mate. Yeah, cheers for that, mate.
No worries. I'll give you a buzz in a few days, buddy.
No worries.